Welcome everyone. Today I'm speaking to you from São Paulo, Brazil, where we are staying with a fellow Vedantan. And during the course of the week, we have some lectures in the city. And it's wonderful that we get an opportunity, whilst on travel, to continue our study of Sunday Wisdom Sessions. Now, after 3 sessions on attachment and the dangers of attachment, the consequences of attachment, to ensure we are not getting attached to attachment, we're moving on. And the next chapter is from the fall of the human intellect. It's on the vital role of the intellect. And in understanding the vital role of the intellect, an important aspect that comes up is, what is the use of faith? Because often we don't see intellect being rational, being analytical, scientific. We don't see it going together with faith, belief. And yet the two are inseparable, even in science. So, to begin, what is the vital role of the intellect? Now, over the last few sessions, we've gone into the depth of what is the nature of the mind. What are the tendencies that our mind has? And the idea is not to punish this mind. The idea is not to vilify the mind. The mind is not a criminal. The mind's nature is what it is. And if we are able to harness that mind, it can become a tool of force. It can complement our personality to drive us to achieve our goals and be happy while achieving them. So the idea is, what have we understood about the mind? It functions on likes and dislikes. It tends to follow a herd for security. It's easier also not to think. It has the tendency to go into the past, the future. And the last one that we went into detail was, it has a tendency to get attached. This is the nature of the mind. With other animals, they have a mind. But because all their limits are already regulated by nature, in the sense, an animal doesn't overeat. You won't find a lion eating more than it needs to. You won't find an animal hunting more than it needs to. So there's a beautiful regulation in nature where each animal takes what it needs to take. So you won't find a gazelle or a deer or even an elephant eating more than it needs to, because that would affect the environment. And if it eats more than it needs to, there won't be enough for them to survive. And nature beautifully regulates. So you won't find an obese zebra. You won't find an emaciated one unless there's a drought. But with human beings, we don't have this automatic regulation. So whilst animals have a mind, they are protected by regulation in their personality. But with human beings, our mind can demand any limit. Often we don't know when to say no. We don't know how to draw those boundaries. We don't know how to set those restrictions on ourselves. How much is too much? How little is too little? We battle. Even if one positively gets inspired to work, we slip into becoming a workaholic. How do we figure it out? But a human being is not neglected by nature. A human being has been blessed by nature and given, just as it has with other animals, a life-sustaining tool. And that tool is the intellect. And the intellect's job is to regulate the mind, but also to think originally, to think independently. Animals don't have this. They cannot act apart from their nature. They cannot change their nature. If you see this small summary of a plant, an animal, and a human. The plant has got a body, yes, clear. Does a plant have a mind? So a plant, we can say, does not feel emotions in the same way that an animal feels emotions. There's no central nervous system. No doubt plants react, but it seems more of an instinct of the physical body. What about an intellect? A plant doesn't have the discrimination animals do. With animals, it's clear. They have a body, they have emotions. Those of you who have pets are so clear about the emotion that an animal expresses. Sometimes the emotion is more consistent than some of our family members. So animals have emotions. But the discrimination to act apart from their nature, the discrimination to control their desires is not there. A human being, body, yes. Mind, feelings, emotions, very much. Intellect, yes. This is what makes us human. So when we say being human or having the human prerogative, or what differentiates us from other species is this quality of intellect, not intelligence. There are some incredible animals that adapt and have intelligence, but not the intellect to think originally, to change their nature. That belongs to a human being. If you take away emotions, then we are a plant, a stone, a statue. If we have feelings, emotions, but are not able to govern them, manage them, we're an animal. But to have emotions, all the gambit of emotions, positive, negative, indifferent, but to decide whether to be affected by them, to execute them, that is the job of the intellect. And this is its vital role. A cheetah has speed. An elephant has strength. A skunk has smell. A human being has intellect. And if we do not use our life-sustaining tool, we do not live fully. In fact, without an intellect, it can lead to our own destruction. So this is the vital role of it. Now we get on to, if this is so vital, if this is so essential in human life, why is it not known? I don't know for many of you, definitely in my case, I never even knew the difference between mind and intellect. The first time I heard about this subject, it was just thoughts. Never had this framework. Why do you think this is not known anywhere? What would you say? We have so many countries participating here. What are the reasons why it's not known? Some of the reasons. You're sure?
Teacher.
There's no teacher. It's not taught anywhere.
Teacher has to be knowledgeable.
We need to be guided towards it.
We need to be guided.
We are unaware.
Unaware?
Our education system.
Our education system.
Is it meant to be so we can stay in the matrix?
It could be that there are those who prefer compliance. Yes.
We think all thoughts are the same.
We think all thoughts are the same. Yes. So let's examine these reasons. Why is it not known? If this is such an essential tool, how is it that nobody's asking about it? Nobody's inquiring about it. Nobody's even here in this group saying, wow, this intellect needs to be known throughout the world. The first part is, there is a complacency. So there are those who are intelligent, who are capable of understanding the need and the vitality of, or the importance of developing the intellect. But there's a complacency. If you ask anybody, how are you doing? I'm fine. How are you? I'm fine. Everybody's fine. And then you inquire into that person. They're on the verge of divorce. They're about to have a heart attack. Everything is on the brink. And yet they will say, I am fine. And genuinely, they think they're fine. But it's because they've been acclimatized to sorrow. Just as so many have been acclimatized to stress. Stress is just normal in life, regardless of all the negative effects that it brings. Josh Billings says, the trouble with most folks is not so much their ignorance. So an ignorant person you can share with is not so much their ignorance as their knowing so many things which ain't so. How can you share with a person who thinks everything is fine? Because there is no seeking, there is no search, and there is no openness. So this is complacency. The moment we say, I know, I'm fine, shutters are closed. We're not looking. Not that I'm saying that the next time I ask you, how are you doing, Anita? And then you say, oh, I am morose, I am miserable. I say, oh, great, that's a seeker. Not necessarily that you have to be miserable, that you have to be morose, but there's got to be room for, I want to improve. So complacency is one of the reasons why not more people are searching for self-development, finding out more about thinking. What's the second reason? The second reason is more mundane. The second reason is we are busy. I've got no time in my day to improve my life. I've got no time in my day to invest in my thinking. I've got no time in my day to change my destiny, change my station. Why? I'm too busy complaining about my destiny, about my station. We're so busy. And genuinely, if you share this with a friend who's not ready, they'll say, look, I got no time for this. I got no time. The weekends? No, weekends are even busier. Sunday, oh my goodness, the children, the family, I got sports, socializing. I got no time for personal development. Henry David Thoreau, he says, busy? It is not enough to be busy. So are the ants. The ants moving around, carrying little branches, little twigs moving around. So are the ants. The question is, what are we busy about? What are we busy doing? And we tend to find activities that take up our time to busy ourselves so that we don't have to think. That's interesting. So it's not that we're convinced about the activity, but when we have that emptiness, when we have that something missing in life, we take up the next thing that comes our way. It could be random, could be absolute chance, not thought out, not deliberate, and we take it up just to fill up the time. You know, sometimes when you have to choose what to watch, you just want to stop thinking. And you just choose maybe what's recommended for you, what's new on Netflix or Amazon Prime or any of these OTTs. And we do this. We fill up the time. But Socrates cautions us, beware the barrenness of a busy life. So powerful. We fill up our time the whole day, and from other people's standpoint, even from our own, it looks very productive. But to what end? Busy doing what? There's a story of two woodcutters. They go out into the forest and they start their career on the same day. Alex and Bob. And the first day, Alex cuts 10 trees, Bob 10 trees. But as they continue, Alex's number of trees that he cuts down starts increasing. So it goes from 10 to 11, 12, and the number of trees that Bob cuts starts coming down. His productivity decreases. It goes from 10 to 9 to 8, and Bob is getting frustrated. So he increases his working hours. He fills up his time. He's putting in more effort. And yet he sees Alex is cutting more trees than him. And after some time, Bob is exhausted, he's exasperated, and he goes to Alex and he says, Alex, please tell me, how is it? I'm working longer than you, and yet you are cutting more trees than me. And Alex says, do you really want to know? And Bob says, yes, I'm asking you sincerely. And Alex says, well, first thing I do in the morning, I sharpen my axe. And do you know what Bob's reply is? I've got no time to sharpen my axe. I'm too busy cutting trees. But this is what we're doing in life. We're saying, I'm too busy living life. I've got too many things to do that I've got no time to make for developing my intellect that will add quality and time and space to everything else that I do. This is why people are not seeking. And that's why you find maybe in our own lives that the times that we've started turning towards spirituality is when there has been a bit of space, a bit of time in our lives, a transition, and then we started looking. So complacency is the first one. So here it is. Why has there been the fall of the human intellect? The first one is complacency. The second one is busyness. And the third one on the chart is ignorance, which many of you mentioned. We are ignorant. This knowledge has not been taught. It is not known. There was no school or college, at least in South Africa, and from our travels, we haven't found it anywhere, that is teaching how to think, the method of thinking, to question, to inquire, to find out the principles yourself. So the examination process is you push with all the intelligence, you push with all the knowledge, and in the exam, you give out the knowledge again. And therefore, when you ask any person or you ask yourself, how much of school do you remember, or college, or university? 2%? 1%? Maybe less? It's because we've not had an education that is aware of the intellect and how to develop it. But this has not been the case for just our generation or the generation before. This has been there for maybe hundreds of years, where original thinking, creativity has not been encouraged. It is much easier to lead a people that is not thinking. So perhaps this could be the reason, but then it assumes that the leaders are thinking. Perhaps. But the idea here is, okay, there has been generations without this renaissance, this inquiry, this search for more, for better, for personal excellence. But even then, if it's not taught to us, why aren't we inquiring? And the challenge is this. The challenge is, we don't know that we're not thinking. We are not aware that something is wrong. So, because we're ignorant. So we don't know that there's a better way. We don't know that there is a different tool out there called the intellect. We don't know. Arthur Schopenhauer It puts it beautifully. He says, the intellect is invisible to the man who has none. So what chance is there for humanity if there is not a little bit of intellect in that person to start the inquiry? Because once they start the inquiry, they'll end up here. Sunday wisdom session or Vedanta philosophy in some form or the other. But this is the catch-22. You need some intellect to know the importance of developing the intellect, to find ways to develop the intellect and start developing the intellect. But if you don't have that little bit of intellect, how do you start? And that's the catch-22. So you need intellect to develop the intellect. And developing the intellect makes you more aware of the intellect, and this goes in a cycle. So for those who have no intellect, suffer. So much suffering in the world. There's another interesting observation, is that in areas where we are ignorant or even insane, we're not aware that we are insane. Do you know that no mad person knows that they are mad? So then how do we all know here in this room that we are not mad also? Suraj, we could be insane. All of us here insane. One insane person talking to other insane people. How do we know that we're not insane? Because an insane person cannot see their own insanity. You've got to be sane to see your insanity or others' insanity. That's interesting. We're not able to see our blind spots. At least in this classroom or in this subject, we are suspicious. And we're not complacent. So we are looking to find the areas that we can improve. We're looking for the areas that are not quite perfect, that we want to refine and get better in. So there's hope. So then what do we do? Develop the intellect. We're not sure about the world. What we are sure about is we can develop ourselves. And the way to develop the intellect is question everything. The moment we start questioning, the intellect gets activated. And depending on the thinking process after that, the intellect gets stronger and stronger. Fortunately, we have a subject that deals with the development of the intellect. Vedanta, or the eternities. Eternities means that which has eternal truths, talks about reality. So we can go deeper and deeper into the subject, but not to become a theology, philosophy professor or speaker, to develop our own intellect. So we question, we use the material that's already there about life to develop the intellect, and then once we've developed our own intellect, there is an opportunity that from our example, from our conviction about the necessity to share this intellect and the way to develop it, to take it to the world. So we spoke about the fall of the human intellect. There's complacency, there's busyness, there's ignorance. But now, let's move to the rise of the intellect. The fall of the human intellect has brought humanity to the cusp of extinction. It's just a few buttons away. Humanity can be wiped out. It seems so precarious, anytime, so fragile. But the rise of the human intellect, what we can do is develop the intellect ourselves. Question, is there a better way of handling things in life? Is there a better way of handling conflict? Is there a better way of handling disagreement? Is there a better way of handling stress? Let's use the knowledge that's already available. To develop the intellect faster, we don't need to go and find out the principles all over again. It'll take so much of time. There are the principles there. We can take those principles experiment, verify in our own life, and then go and live them. And with that conviction, those who are inspired, and this is what the author suggests, let's get together. Let's build a think tank of those people inspired to develop intellect in society, to change the way we react, to change the way we think, that can benefit ourselves, but also everyone around us. If it's just ourselves, but not those around us, it's a question of time before you also suffer. So the idea is, think further. Think long term. Think with greater foresight. And that's what the intellect does. Not for short-term gain. That's the mind. So the rise of the human intellect is to question. That's when the intellect becomes active. And this is something we can do with our communities, with our children. Let's question. Even strong belief systems, strong traditions, they only get stronger through questioning. They get reinforced, but you must have the explanations ready. Then the second is study and reflect on the eternities. And the third one, bring the thinkers together. This is the rise of the human intellect. And what a world this could be. What happens if we continue the neglect of the intellect, if the human intellect falls further? And we just have to take a look around the world to see what's happening. If there is no intellect, and the intellect does two things. So just to recap, what are those two things that the intellect does? The role of the intellect.
To discriminate,
Discriminates, yes.
direct and guide the mind,
So it manages the mind. Excellent, yes. One more key aspect for today.
Reason and decide.
Reasons, decides. It thinks independently of our biases, of our prejudices. It thinks originally. And when the intellect thinks originally, independently, then it gets stronger. So it means to question the beliefs that we've accepted. Now, if we don't have both of these, the mind is running rampant in our personality. So we will go with whatever gives the mind and the ego that quick term joy, solace, satisfaction. But we don't think of the consequences because the intellect is missing. Then the other aspect is, if we do not think originally, then we follow the herd. We fall a prey, we fall a victim to blind beliefs, superstitious ideas. And the trouble with that is, without intellect in society, we create a group of fanatics where everyone has such strong beliefs, such strong opinions, but doesn't know the reason behind them. Nor are they open for discourse, for discussion, for debate, to find out if there is a better way of handling it, or seeing the other person's point of view, or perhaps being open to taking a point from the other person's point of view that could be useful for yourself. And with the advent of technology, technology has not helped to develop the intellect. In fact, it's exacerbated the problem. When I say that, how? Technology is feeding the mind. If we look at social media, the way the algorithms are designed is to cater to the mind. What you like, it keeps on giving you. What you're interested in, keeps on feeding you. So the more you consume, the more it gives you, it feeds you. But the other aspect of it is, For those of you who are aware of how social media runs, even the type of news channels that we select, what kind of views do you get on social media?
Some truth and some fake.
Some truth, some fake.
People's opinions.
People's opinions.
Confirmation bias.
Confirmation. This is it. It's confirmation bias. The news that we choose, the channel that we choose to watch, the people that we choose to follow, we're choosing people whose views we like, who are aligned to our views. So what's happening there? We are constantly being fed not a different view, not a different perspective, but the same view and perspective that we already align with. So what is happening is, because of this design, the world is becoming more and more polarized. So if you have a particular view, it could be left, you're becoming extreme left. If you have a particular view, right, you're becoming extreme right, because you're only hearing that side of the story. We become fanatic. Blind beliefs, blind faith also. We follow because whoever has the louder voice, or whoever's voice we are born into, that's the one that we follow. Not the one that gives us greatest happiness. Not the one that makes most sense. Not the one that aligns with our personality better through our thinking, through our conviction. And therefore, fanaticism comes in. And this is just the result of non-thinking. William Drummond, he says, if you do not have the thinking, if you do not have the reasoning in you, he who cannot reason is a fool. But he who will not reason is a bigot. So one is capacity. One is you may have the capacity, but you choose not to reason. But he who dare not reason is a slave. We're scared of reasoning. We're scared of thinking. What will that person say? What if I raise a different opinion? This is a slave. The bigot doesn't want to reason. Fanatic. And if you can't reason, you're a fool. Don't have the capacity. A human being has an intellect. But just because we have an intellect does not mean that it's strong and that it's ready for life. It needs to be developed by being activated. How do we activate it? By becoming aware through questioning. And then once we're aware, we're able to see. And then once we're able to see, we're able to adapt. Look at different points of view, gather data, form our own conclusions. This is thinking. And one of the areas where we see that there has not been any analysis. Now, as I'm saying that, another one comes to mind because of our experiences in South America. The one that came to mind, but it's not the main one, is food. We often follow the food habits and choices of the place that we're born into. And the question I've been getting so often in our travels in this part of the world is, Sudhakar, why are you vegan? Does Vedanta mean you have to be vegetarian? Does it mean you have to be vegan? I said, no, Vedanta does not have any do's and don'ts. It says use your intellect, analyze and do what makes sense to you. But in the question, there's an assumption. And the assumption is that they have thought about what they eat and why they eat it. So if I turn the question back on them, I said, but why do you eat what you eat? It's normal. No, you need it. Protein. We don't get these things here. So it's not really what will give me maximum energy. What is a more sustainable way of living? What is a way of living with less harm, less hurt, etc.? So it's not really thought out. It's just we've taken it for granted. Now, food is just one of the many, many things. It could be clothes. It could be mannerisms. But the one that's having such devastating effects on humanity is religion. And when it comes to religion, because religion is in the area of the unknown, it deals with the unknown, that which is beyond the world. God, Creator, consciousness, these are all terms that nobody knows. No one knows. So there is room for it to be exploited. And it gets exploited because there's a vulnerability there. It's an area of ignorance for everybody. But in our approach to religion is the problem. Because there are so many things we don't know. And that's okay. It's okay not to know something. But the approach to religion has been, when explaining an unknown, how do people explain it? They give another unknown. So when they talk about God, they say infinite mercy, infinite love. We don't know what love is. We don't know what infinite is. So we're no closer to understanding what God is. We say all-pervading, omnipotent. These are words that we can't really conceive, so we don't get any closer. And it's something like this, and it's a principle of education, that when we're trying to share a concept with a person, it must proceed from known, what you know, to the unknown. But what's happening in religion today is, there's the unknown, and they're giving further unknowns. So they're saying, there's a heaven, unknown. The way to get to heaven, if you do this, 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 you get your unknown. But it's not explaining how to make heaven known. So for example, if you want to go to perhaps a shopping center in Sao Paulo, I'm new to the area. I say, how do I get to Igautami? It's a shopping center here. And I ask Sergio, he's from the city, I ask him, where is it? And he's like, oh, Sudhakar, no problem. It's next to my office. Oh, okay, thank you. Except I don't know where his office is. So I say, that's not helpful. It hasn't helped me. I say, oh, it is next to the office. And I'm repeating to everybody. Someone else comes and visits Sao Paulo. You must go to the shopping center. I haven't been yet because I didn't find out where it was. It's next to Sergio's office. Oh, okay, great. Who is Sergio? So I ask, okay, where is your office? Okay, so office is... So he doesn't know how to explain to me. He said, do you have Google Maps? I said, no, look, I don't have Google Maps. I don't have any data. He said, okay, what do you know? And that's the starting point. I say, I know the park. Which park? Ibirapuera. Ah, okay. From that park, you take a right here, you move towards this direction, and actually you pass my office, but that's incidental now. You don't need to worry about it. You'll also pass a large building. It's at the bottom. There is a Ford shop in the showroom at the bottom. Keep going that way, about a kilometer down, turn left, there's the shopping center. But I needed that one known factor to uncover the rest. And this is why faith is important, because there are so many unknown things in life. You cannot move. You cannot grow unless you are open to exploring the unknown. And to explore it needs faith. So faith is the starting point. So every intellectual needs faith, because how will they inquire? The greatest discoveries in science have been made because there was faith in the beginning. There is something unknown that you're trying to make known. But the modus operandum in trying to make that unknown known is where it could be a result of non-thinking, blind faith that leads to fanaticism, or reasoned faith that leads to knowledge, that leads to wisdom. So when I say that an intellectual needs faith, we need it for every aspect of life. For example, if I ask you, Dana, do you know your parents?
I think I do.
You think you do. But how are you sure they are your parents? Do you know for sure? No, we don't know for sure. So there is a faith element there. They have repeated it. We've seen them so often, but that is not absolute proof. Okay, you take a DNA test, but you don't need to. You've got faith. There's no proof as such, no direct proof, but you've got all the corroboratory evidences. You say, I look like my mother. I got the eyes of my father. I've seen them growing up. I've seen the photos. This is not proof. But it's reasoned faith. It's a faith based on corroboratory evidence. The other is, somebody walks up to you randomly and says, I am your father. We should be suspicious. So on what basis do you say that? No, because I say it loud. In fact, I'm saying it very often. In fact, let me get a few other people to say it. This does not make it reason. So corroboratory evidence is, when I look at all the contributory facts, it is very likely that it's true. I'm saying, okay, one is your parents, but the other is, you walk into a building. How do you know that the building is not going to collapse? Like, have you done the measurements? Have you seen the structure? Have you been there for the construction? There are so many things that we take on faith without which we would not be able to live. So if any intellectual, a scientist, claims, I do not need faith in life, I am a scientist, I am all logic, they need faith in every aspect. You need faith to eat the food that you're having. How do you know when you go to a restaurant that that food has not been contaminated? Now you have corroboratory evidences, but you've not tested the food. You know that it's a good restaurant, it's got good reviews, well reputed, it looks clean. You've not been to the kitchen. Now, I don't mean to strike fear in everybody today. That's not the idea. But I'm saying how many of the things that we do, we rely on faith. A person who attends their first Vedanta class because of a reference from a friend, that's faith. You don't know if it's going to be useful for you. You don't know if it's going to speak to you. It's unknown. But because of the reference, corroboratory evidences, it's a good friend, a benefactor who thinks along like you, who knows you well. Say, okay, so let me give it a chance. And then you give it a chance, it becomes knowledge. And when there is knowledge, there is no more need for faith in that area. Because now you know it. So, and there are two definitions where faith comes in. The first is by Joel Goldsmith. He says, faith is a belief. So, right, it's a belief in a thing I do not know, unknown, until I come to know what I believe in. So, we must begin with faith. The same thing with the spiritual path. We do not know the self, we do not know the spirit. It's unknown. Many masters have spoken about it, we've spoken about it in this class, but it's unknown. So we start with faith, but then we start putting in the work. And the reason why we even entertain that faith is because of corroboratory evidences. We've got some ideas why there should be a consciousness behind the matter. And we've discussed these ideas. So we go into it and we say, it makes sense. Okay, I'm going to entertain it. But don't stop there. Do the work for that belief to become knowledge, to become wisdom, where you know it. So I don't believe it anymore. I know it. Somebody asked a self-realized master, do you believe there is a God? And they replied, I do not believe there is God. I know God. Because they found it. Until we become self-realized, enlightened, God-realized, it is a belief, it is faith. Until you become it, until you know it. Now we can use this in any context. Let us take faith and all scientific processes, deductive reasoning, they all begin like this. There is a question. And from the question, we make some observations and we put up a hypothesis. And that hypothesis is faith. But then we proceed scientifically, logically, we experiment, we do trials, we see if it matches our hypothesis or not, we refine it, and then we come to a conclusion. Hypothesis is incorrect, hypothesis is correct under these conditions, etc. But this is the thinking process. The starting point was faith. But that faith based with the intellect becomes powerful. And if the intellect is guiding faith all the way to the end, it becomes knowledge, it becomes wisdom. That ability to take faith and bring it all the way right to wisdom is in Sanskrit called Shraddha. Shraddha, it means faith, but it means the whole journey. To take, as Joel Goldsmith said, to take a belief in a thing you do not know until you come to the point that you know it. Then you have Shraddha. Faith by itself does not benefit you. But real faith, Shraddha, that makes you. In fact, the Bhagavad Gita says, a man is made up of what his Shraddha is. Your consistency. Your ability to take your faith and convert it into wisdom. He is verily what his Shraddha is. You're made up of that quality. And this is the vital role of intellect and faith in life. So in the areas of unknown, whenever we pursue the unknown, let's question, does it make sense? Let's question, are there corroboratory evidences to pursue this further? And then proceed with Shraddha, consistency, conviction, determination, until that belief becomes knowledge. Then you are transformed. And that's our topic for today. Next week we will speak on objectivity, but we have time for Q&A. So we take up the Q&A. If you have a question, please put it in the chat and the questions will be read out.
The first question, is intelligence the same as intellect? I know a lot of intelligent people have sharp minds and question everything. Everything is black or white to them, but they lack the power of self-examination and suffer their intelligence. Their sharp intellect seems to rob them of their humanity.
So intellect is different from intelligence. Intelligence is when you are well informed. You receive a lot of information. It does not necessarily mean that you have processed that information or you've made that information your own. Secondly, it does not mean that you've been able to use that information to manage your mind. So often, what the intelligentsia do, people that you're mentioning, is that they accumulate information and they use it in conversation and they have different points of view, but they're really repeating what they've read. They've not necessarily thought about it independently. And that's why you can see if you go a little bit deeper, if you scratch beneath the surface, they haven't gone that far. So you find they will start stuttering. But you have to have that question ready, you have to have some of the information ready to engage with them in that kind of conversation. The other part is, have they absorbed that information where they can use it for self-awareness, or even use it to see if the other person is receptive to the information that they want to show off or the information that they want to display. Now, if there's no receptive audience, what are we doing sharing random information? Each one of us here can get onto ChatGPT and get any information that we want. So they don't have that self-awareness, but because they've read so much, they're looking for an avenue where they can display that information. So intelligence does not equal intellect. For those of us who do consume a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, let us remember that that knowledge can become a burden. And just as food, if we consume too much without digesting it, it just has to exit the system. Same thing with too much of information. Verbally, we're just exiting all that we've tried to consume. So let us consume information at the rate that we can digest and reflect on it. Then the information becomes useful to our lives. Next question.
The next question, what was the second definition of faith?
Thank you. The second definition of faith, or rather quotation, is the kind of faith that has conviction behind it. And it's a quotation by Rabindranath Tagore. He says, faith is a bird that feels the light and sings while the dawn is still dark. So look at that example. The dawn, there's no evidence of it yet. It's not yet come. It's still dark. Then how is the bird so sure that the dawn is coming? And that should be the conviction of our faith. Like, we haven't seen the dawn yet. Now, when the dawn is there, you don't need faith. It's like, look, there it is. But if it's still dark, that's where the faith is. Now, dawn is coming. That conviction that the bird has, that's the kind of faith that we should harbor. In the sense, when we take up a belief, that unknown, there must be corroboratory evidence. There must be supporting ideas on why we should follow that. So it makes our conviction resolute. And that will help our Shraddha to make sure that we go all the way to the end to become a realization, to become wisdom, to become knowledge. So thank you for that prompt.
Next question. Would you say the main religious practices are done out of fear and not intellect-based?
When we say the main religious practices, it's difficult to generalize and comment on all, but there definitely is an aspect in religion which is about punishment, which is about using fear to bring about behavioral change. But then that approach, yes, it is using fear. So if you don't do this, you go to hell. If you don't do this, you'll be punished. And instead of that, a more fitting approach, a more inspiring approach would be, if you do this, this is the quality of your life. So rather than fear, you're using reason, that this action will produce this result. This result is more helpful for what you would like to achieve in life. And the affirmation or the inspiration would be more effective than the fear, would be more joyful than the path of fear. Because fear comes from an external imposition, right? You're worried of the consequences from outside. But when it comes from conviction from inside, it's much easier to follow and be true to that path. So we find the same thing, as you're mentioning, some religions are doing this. We find some parents do this. They use fear to bring up the children. But the trouble is, once the parent is there, there's no transformation of behavior in that child, because they've not helped the child inculcate it from within. They've been behaving like that because of fear. So not effective in the long run. Next question.
Last submitted question. One definition of faith seems to be based on knowledge and evidence. The other definition seems feeling based. Why is the feeling relevant or necessary if we have evidence?
The feeling is necessary because you don't know it. So because you don't know it, you can't prove it intellectually yet. You can only hypothesize, you can only theorize. Like, for example, the theory of reincarnation. If I explain the reasoning to you, it might appeal to you. You say, yeah, it makes sense, it makes sense. But there's still a faith in it, because there's no proof about it. Once there's proof, there is no need for the faith. So that element of the unknown makes the faith relevant. The other type of faith, so one is faith that is built on the foundation of supporting evidences. The other is blind faith. It's just feeling. And someone comes to you and they says, look, if you donate so much to this cause, your family member will be cured of this illness. Say, how? What evidence? No, trust me. Another person might say, look, you're accumulating so much of wealth in this lifetime. What's going to happen when you go? All that wealth will go to the government, estate, or it'll go to the son-in-law. Do you like either option? So, oh no, I don't want my wealth to go to the son-in-law. They say, okay. Then you know what? I can make a plan for you. He says, what? You leave all your wealth to me. I will find you in the next lifetime, wherever you are born, and I will give you the wealth. Really? Okay. Blind faith. It's not based on any logic, not based on any reason, not based on any, it's superstitious. This is blind faith. So we want to differentiate between blind faith and intellect-led faith. Blind faith is pure mind. So this is where there is room for exploitation, there is room for fallibility, because we're gullible. The mind is just believing, and because it supports the mind's desire, it supports the mind's confirmation bias. The other is intellect-led. Does this make sense? Okay, yes, all right, I can examine it, I can approach, And I'd like to know a little bit more. Tell me why. Why do you say this? Why do you really think that intellect is so important? And you come back with the questions. You come back with the questions. Say, okay, so I'm not yet experiencing the benefits of intellect, but I can understand how this would work. And then when you put it into practice, you make the time to develop the intellect, you find out the literature that can help you question, study, reflect on it, and then you find the intellect getting stronger and making better choices, managing the nature of our mind, or rather harnessing the nature of the mind better, and you experience that quality of life difference, then your faith has become wisdom. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this Sunday. We speak to you next week.